All right, good evening, people. Good evening, good evening, good evening. This is Eric from Winning Strategies, Fatherhood, the Courts, and Custody. Okay, and tonight we have two individuals. Okay, one is a social activist, Mr. Kwame Rose. Okay, and another one being, you know, none other than my guy Norman Nix from the Norman Nix Show on YouTube. Okay, however, before I get into it, okay, this evening. I have to come to you like I always do with a scripture reference. And my favorite reference, is Malachi 4 and 6, as it goes. And he shall turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the heart of the children to the fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. Okay, now, also, let me show this to you, as I always like to do.
Yo, this is my guy Eric Smith with Winning Strategies, and you guys already know I would not be representing anybody who did not affiliate with Father's Rights. Call my man at 443-768-8158. And if you need to email him because of correspondence you need him to look at, it's winningstrategies.fcc@gmail.com. This is Dads for the Win. It's your boy Norm. See you in another video.
Strategies, fatherhood, the courts, and custody. You get quality service. I had a father call me at work because he filed on his own and they were trying to basically ream him with child support. So he stood up in front of the judge and said, well, Judge, I have a problem with that. I told that lady from DSS, because he's in Howard County, Maryland, okay? I told that lady that I lost my job and that I didn't have any income. So how can you make a ruling on my past income? Not present, but past. So he thought about it. He said, that's right, sir. So he said his child support went from 1,300 to 700. Then he said, well, it's still wrong because I don't work for Papa John's anymore. I lost my job and I was in an accident. Here's my medical documentation. Oh, you're right again, Mr. Richard. Then, judge calls a recess, he says, because he wanted to look over the documentation. Then he's approached by DSS, and they start to ask him questions. He says he turned around to her and said, ma'am, I don't have to answer you. And she walks away. All of this was information he learned, he was privy to when he was with Winning Strategies, Fatherhood, the Courts, and Custody. All right. I like to play those just to get us started this evening, just to get us started every time. Okay. Now, you'll see it's like it's called perseverance. Your children's growth depend on it. All right. Why I said that is because several reasons. Okay. You have to persevere when you're going up against the system nowadays. Okay. You have to understand certain rights. You understand your rights. You have to understand certain things about how they're treating you. Now, I'm going to bring on this father, this I'll say social activist, okay, from the state of Maryland. All right, but he travels all around. All right, Mr. Kwame Rose. Mr. Rose, good evening to you, sir. All
Good,
right,
good evening, Eric. How you doing?
all right. Now, just tell people a little bit about you and what you do.
Um, yeah, I'm Kwame. I'm from Baltimore. Most people know me originally as uh, the kid who confronted Geraldo Rivera during the Baltimore uprising. And since then, I've tried to use my platform uh, to empower and inspire change across the country. We've done some work internationally in Germany as well, Germany and a couple other countries. Um, yeah, and then with all that and all the great work I've been able to do in my adult life, I became a father in 2017. And look, I done fought with presidents. I done fought with all type of dignitaries and confronted them. Uh, but fighting in court was that was a long battle.
Right.
And I grew up in a two-parent household, and so it was everything was new to me in that situation. And so um, yeah, I basically I learned, and what I did learn was, like, from watching in the courtrooms, was that there are a lot of fathers who are going through the same thing and have to suffer in silence. If you know me, I got a big mouth, and number one, I don't like suffering. Number two, I don't like silence.
All right. So now let's just I'll say get into the meat and potatoes and everything. All right. Here in the state of Maryland, okay, you know from your experience and from what you've gone through how the courts can be unjust, how the courts can be sometimes very one-sided. All right. Now I try to be as transparent as possible with the audience. If you've ever seen any of the lives or the recordings I've done, okay, I like to talk about my situation. I like to talk about how I went up against the judge and the magistrate, and I try to encourage other fathers to do the same. However, in encouraging them to do the same, I need them to understand there are certain rules and there are certain, I'll say, buttons you can push, all right, to get them to understand that you don't want your rights to be taken away. Now, I'm gonna go off of the recent Zoom conference or the Zoom meeting I had with and I think I told you about this, with the magistrate that um, heard my case when I tried to put my child's mother on contempt of court for not allowing me to see my son for the last 4 years. Okay. A lot of fathers need to know that when you have somebody served, okay, if if she's represented by an attorney, you can send the information to the attorney's PO box with a confirmation that it was delivered. Now, here's the situation. The magistrate said, "Well, Mr. Smith, there was something wrong with how you had this done. They had to sign for it." Well, I said, "Well, ma'am, that's kind of hard. Okay, she's represented by an attorney, and the attorney has a PO box. A PO box can't sign for a receipt." So she looked up in Maryland law, okay, and she found that I was absolutely right. As long as I had that sent to the PO box with a confirmation, she served. And so her attorney, who's from the Maryland Disability Law Center, says, "Well, I gotta look that up. I disagree." Okay, she's gonna disagree with a law from the state of Maryland. All right, and I'm like, "Ma'am, this is a law that you're supposed to follow. You don't know that?" I wasn't being smart. Okay, I was being me. Okay, you've already had one judge on your side was taking rights from my son from me. Okay, and now you're gonna try to make me seem like I don't know what I'm doing, lady. You studied for maybe 2 years after you got your bachelor's degree. I've been staying up all night trying to figure out what's wrong with the system, and I finally found out. And you're still going to try to dog me? No, we're not going to have that. So basically, it was all right. It the judge says, okay. She sends me an email. "Oh, I'll accept the notification from email from you." I bet you will because it's in the law. Fast forward, I sends her an email saying, well, when can I start to see my son so we can go to parent-child therapy? Oh, you have to talk with your child's mother about that. You CC'd her in the email, so what I got to talk to her about? This is the game that they play, back and forth, back and
Now,
forth.
I gotta. What's your
So, I, say
what is
again,
your what's your custody arrangement?
my custody arrangement is Wednesday, then the weekend. Okay. Now, because the last when I had the Zoom session in 2020, Judge DePietro tried to do whatever he did to take my rights away, and I had to follow this certain path. I'm like, why? I'm like, okay, I didn't argue it. I couldn't. I took it to the Maryland Court of Special Appeals, the highest court in Maryland. They tried to tell me that I was wrong. I took it back again. Then I said, well, you know what? Let me file it to have her in contempt because, mind you, this was 2020 that he put this order in. I have not seen my son, and it's 2023. And you know what? I'm going to let you know something. My sister said, Eric, that's your son on TV. I'm like, she sent me the link. I found out what school he went to. Yesterday, I went to his school, okay, talked with the principal. I said, can I see his copies of his report cards? Can I see other stuff? They said, well, yeah. Well, he says, I'm going to talk to the law department of Baltimore County Schools to see about your interaction. I'm like, you can talk to them all you want, but I have it right here on paper. So I'm going to let you do what you want to do. Okay. And I'm going to follow up afterwards. I'm going to give him a few days for the law department to get back to him, even though I have all their email addresses as well. So when I don't see that email coming from them, they can look to have an email from me. So I say all that to say, I need fathers to understand the ball is in your court. The ball is in your court. You just have to learn how to play hardball and not softball because they're going to try to take your rights away. They're going to try to, pardon my expression, screw you at all ends. Your comments, Kwame?
Yeah, I think something similar happened to me. In my case, the jurisdiction uh, is in DC, and so at the time I was commuting to DC to like actually exercise my rights. But in 2020, of course, what happened? The pandemic. So because of the pandemic, the courts are closed. So on the day I'm supposed to get my daughter, I got a text message that read, excuse me, a text message that read, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, we went to Arizona." Uh, I wound up not seeing my daughter for months after that. A violation of the court order. And even in your case, right? So there are, because one of the things we've done, and we just launched an organization called the Foundation for Fathers, because like I've seen so many men, like sitting in court for the past 5 years, I've seen men grow so frustrated and say, Yana, I don't even care. Give me my son every other weekend, my child every other weekend, and tell me what I got to pay. I don't even want to be here. I ain't doing that. But
Right.
the laws, right? So my child's mother was literally in violation. And mind you, she is the one who initiated the court process. She was literally in violation of every court order that the judge gave from 2018 up until 2022. Every court order, she was in violation. It didn't matter. She was only fined one time $100. The second time she was found in contempt because it takes months and months, right? So every time we would go to court, he'd scold her. And then once we leave court, she would just decide on her own not to follow the court order. and I have to call DC police. They show up. They can only give me a police report because they're like, we can't enforce a civil order. So then when we get back to court, he's just like, well, why are you even here? We shouldn't even be here, blah, blah, blah. Now, eventually last June, I wound up getting full custody of my daughter without visitation. And I had that up until March of this year. But if you look at the laws in Maryland and many states, there is no punishment or that is followed or for parents who willfully violate a court's orders without purpose. What should happen is if that parent has a legitimate concern, they should haul their asses down to the court and file a petition. But they don't do that. But there are states. So if you look at Alaska, a parent who withholds a child and violates that court order is fined $200 for each period that they violate. So let's say you're supposed to get your child on Wednesday, she doesn't show up, $200. You're supposed to get them every other week, getting $200. And that, because what it does is hold that parent who is the parent at liable for violating that court order. It holds them accountable. In Maryland, I've seen many of my friends when the parent who is in violation, the offending parent, they are not held accountable. And you know, I don't want to, it's not a man versus woman thing, but the numbers don't like it is swayed so that Black men do not have the protection of a court order. Because, and what's the purpose of that? That's what many men get frustrated. What's the purpose of having this court order when as soon as I leave these doors, there is nothing that makes her have to follow it? And now if I call the police, they can only give me, because they can't enforce a civil order unless you get like specific language put into that court order. But even that takes time. It took me 4 years to get those words added into that court order. And what sucks is that the child, my daughter, and our relationship had to suffer for all the many months it took for me following the court order, then having to file a motion and just waiting, praying on a court date that could come 60 days at the quickest.
Yeah, yeah. Now, before I go on, I wanted to Norman, Mr. Norman Nix of the Norman Nix Show. Okay.
What's up?
Uh, I Kwame, this dude here, when I saw his snippets on YouTube, what, 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, Norm, I reached out, boom, point blank. If you ever get a chance, you gotta look at him, look at his snippets. He's even been here to do a program for fathers to help me out. Now, what you said, Kwame, is absolutely correct. Okay? Absolutely correct. However, okay, fathers in the state of Maryland, and I'm gonna only talk about Maryland for right now. Fathers in the state of Maryland need to, I'm gonna say, man up. Okay? When I say man up, I really mean that look at how things are, look at what you're going up against, and look at who's out here to help you. Norman knows I have been pushing this thing for 3 years that I got the 501c3, but 2.5 years since I've been friends going strong with Norman. It's a sad case. Now, Norman did his segment through AI. Now, I want you to listen to Norman's and what Norman had to go through. Mr. Nix.
What's up? So I'm Norman Nix of the Norman Nix Show. I've been doing fathers' rights advocacy for years. I strong for the last 3 years, but I've been in the game for probably the last 5 years, online. Long story short, the way I got cut, I'm a paralegal. I used to be a former paralegal in the financial industry. And when I started going through my baby mama drama, I used my paralegal skills and this kind of transferred the knowledge of being a paralegal and being in the game over to family court and kind of adapted into that, that portion of law. So knowing the research that's needed and knowing and the framework that is needed as far as being a paralegal, no matter what segment of law you're going into, the research is still the same. So with my background, what I did is use the new tools of AI to basically take my case, and really what I did was my modification because I had already won custody on my own. She tried to do a modification about 2, 3 months ago, and I took her attorneys before her attorney let her go, and I beat his ass, and as far as on paper, before he let her go, and before he let her go before trial because he didn't want to go up against me. I went into Chat GPT and I took his whole outline of his argument on her behalf, and I took the legalese out of it. And the first thing I did is copy pasted it, put it in Chat GPT, and asked it to take the legalese out of it and talk to me in plain text. So when you go into Chat GPT, you got to talk to it in layers. So at first you got to it's like a real person. So you
Mhm.
got to get to know each other, and you tell it how you want it to talk to you. So in my personal Chat GPT, I asked it to talk to me as if it was an attorney and I was a paralegal in my first year of law school because I know a little bit about nothing. So when the Chat GPT and I established our boundaries as far as my learning parameter, I then put the copy pasted my ex's argument into Chat GPT and compared it to the ARS statutes, which are the Arizona Revised Statutes for family court
And,
or
and,
the
and
state.
Arizona is one of the states where there's punitive damages if a parent withholds the child.
Correct. There's a lot of consequences for parental alienation and for going against a court order and as far as a contempt of court, especially when you're doing it facetiously and not obeying the judge. As far as Chat GPT, I took her argument and I compared it to the Arizona Revised Statutes for the rules for family court here in Arizona. And I asked it, I said, can you find any violation on my part? No violation was found according to ChatGPT. So there was no argument to be said. So when I went into court, there was nothing for me to rebuttal, or to excuse or defend against because I did nothing wrong. So knowing that going in there, I knew her shit was a bunch of hot wind and she was getting an attorney to try to present it as the garbage as food for
Mhm.
everybody to consume. So knowing that, I went ahead and I made sure that everything that the attorney put in there as far as his argument or his it wasn't even an argument, his explanation around child support and why the modification needed to be done. I was able to say, well, he mentioned this, but where is the ARS statute as far as her back child support, or as far as her being on time with child support? So I was able to take his argument or what he was going to use as an argument, and I was able to also compare that to Chat GPT and say, well, if he wants to argue this point, and you would do this for your own case, but if they want to argue this point, how does that coincide or parallel to where they're at default on this portion of the case? So, for instance, if your ex is saying, well, he won't co parent, he won't communicate, well, it's impossible to communicate if you're always trying to accuse him of being abusive.
Yeah.
Why would he want to communicate with you? So we need to establish where that breakdown comes, and either through parental, court modification, where you go in front of the judge or mediator and you try to hash it out before trial. If you, as the man, whether black, white, whatever, go in there and say, look, this is what I have, this is what I've been doing, here's my yearly day planner of me dropping off the kids, picking up the kids on time. Here's the emails. I'm curious to know what emails she has that are in question that are so toxic that she feels we can't communicate. Otherwise, we need to get past this, and she needs to get past her ego, and we need to do this for the best interest of the kids. And
Hmm.
there's a way to say that very efficiently, only one time, to where you don't have to keep repeating yourself to where you piss off the judge.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
So
And you
it,
know
it, it can be done.
what sounds familiar about both of you all's things? It's as if there's a playbook that the other parents all follow, and they're not even talking to each other. But it's always, oh, he's abusive, or whatever the accusation is. That, I mean, in certain states, it literally says the preponderance of the evidence that you have to prove these things. And what you'll find is like parental law is written in such a layman's way that it makes it very evidently clear the courts really don't want to be bothered with these issues. Now, it's two-sided, right? Like, it should be stuff that should be worked out, right? In the perfect world, there isn't egos, there aren't emotions, there are feelings. Two adults should be able to figure out the best parenting plan for their children. But on the second hand, you have the courts with all of these programs, right, that probably were initiated with the best intention to relieve the burden off of a judge having to make a decision, but yet they're not as effective, right? So like sending people who've been battling in court for 5 years to mediation, to me, just makes absolutely no sense. Because if we could mediate this shit, we wouldn't be here. But then requiring that person to then attend 2 mediation sessions before filing a motion, it just makes no sense. And I know in Maryland, you have magistrates before you even get to the judge. And it's just like a delayed process because, you know, part of the stat and the way parental law is written is kind of the best interest of the child, right? And the parent's ability to communicate. It has to be defined, right? You cannot just make up these accusations, withhold the child, and then there is no punishment.
Now, this is I want to share something with you, gentlemen. All right, Kwame, on that, just on that, I want to show you what I wrote to the Maryland legislators. Okay, this is what I wrote. Okay, I asked for, okay, a commission to study fatherhood fairness. Okay, I asked for a commission to basically look at the judge's decisions and how they and the magistrate decisions and how they come about them. Okay, basically, I asked for a commission to study these things. I don't want to hear, or fathers do not want to hear. Well, we'll see. No, let's get past we'll see. All right, let's get past all that. And the reason why winning strategies now has been at the Ravens games fundraising is because starting in January, I'm going to have to look at what meetings that the Senate Judiciary is having, or I mean judicial proceedings, and what the judiciary is having, and what the human service meetings are there, so fathers can go down and express their interest. Fathers can go down and talk about what they want. All right. I find that Maryland does not follow that family law. They don't follow it for fathers. And ever since me and one of the board members have been in Annapolis since 2018, we have looked at it, and there are no actual laws that help fathers. Okay, they call themselves presenting laws. Okay, but then they aren't supported in committee. Now, for all those who know about politics, if it doesn't make it out of committee, it ain't going nowhere.
Yeah.
So, in order for it to make it out of committee, we need fathers to go down. And so, therefore, Winning Strategies is doing fundraisers so we can um, rent vans to take fathers down there. Okay, we want fathers to be there. We want fathers to show what's going on. You want something to say, Kwame?
Yeah, when it comes to Maryland and this upcoming legislative session, because we're doing it in a couple states, but we actually have legislation on two folds as it pertains to visitation. So I think the easiest win and where, because right now in Maryland law, the custody law is very lax. And
yeah.
And the best way to get a decision is to limit the judge's ability to make it on their own and have it written in law. And so right now in Maryland, there are no punitive damages for if a parent willfully violates a court order. And then, so what we're doing is passing trying to get a piece of legislation passed that says if you have an established court order and a parent willfully violates that court order, the non-offending parent, once they file a petition with the court should grant that parent a hearing no later than 10 days after that petition is filed with the court. It should happen that same day, and it should be a de facto hearing or an emergency hearing, but 10 days. Then if a parent, right, the second piece of legislation is if a parent files for custody, then the court should hear that petition as soon as possible, because I'm only coming to court because I can't see my kid. And so the courts are being, and I get it, they're backed up. They shouldn't have to do this, but it's the only avenue a lot of men have to actually be able to build a relationship with their children. And so this upcoming legislative session in Maryland, we're trying to get those two things passed. And I think there's a lot of leeway happening, because what you see now is the frustration of fathers on every level of the social economic ladder going through the same damn thing.
Exactly. So
So,
listen.
so
Go ahead,
real
Norman.
quick, let me jump in this real quick. So I was actually having a good discussion with Lamont earlier, and I was supposed to tag him in this, but I think he had to go back to work. But we were discussing about we were talking about the issue of sides and how the perception of family court for a female versus a male when this first starts. So when we step back into step one, when family court, before all of this entanglement, before we start playing, four-dimensional chess and all this stuff that we start talking about as far as family court and, and comparities and crabs in a bucket or whatever. When everything first starts off and the relationship has a bump in the road, the first thing that happens to initiate everything is gossip. The wife, girlfriend, whatever, goes to her mother, sister, girlfriend, friend, co-worker and says, I think he's cheating. And at that moment, there's a game plan that's set in place from that experience of that Me Too, of that friend, woman, whatever, the gay friend, well, whoever she's talking to, trying to get that advice is telling her, you need to now set yourself up for financial success because he violated a contract. You're a boyfriend. There is no contract. You just had a kid together. You know what I mean? But the system now is set up to where anytime there's an issue, and this is what and unfortunately this is where it gets political. You have on one side the red team that is anti-government, doesn't want the government in your household. But every time they see a man of color or a woman of color or anybody outside of their members only club, what's the first thing they do? Police, there's a black man in the park and he doesn't have his dog on a leash, or you know what I mean, or whatever. Same thing with our women. The first thing they do is call the police to win an argument. So they start that same European, like you were saying before when I came on, that same European institutionalized, denim that they put on women to tell them, look, you're a victim. You're not strong enough to go against them. You're not even strong enough to argue against them. So don't even raise your voice. Call us.
Yeah.
We'll separate you. We'll get his wallet. We'll have him in timeout. We'll make him pay his debt. And if you have kids, you'll be financially set and can move on to wherever you want to go after that.
Yeah. And I think
so to come back around real quick, what men have to do is they have to not, when we get together in the aftermath, because we don't want to put our dick on the table and say, hey, you know what? I fucked up. I cheated on her. You know what I mean? We just want to say, you know what? Because I can guarantee 90% of the fathers out there have probably cheated on their girl. And that's what started this whole back and forth. Real talk. Not all fathers are great husbands or great boyfriends. They may be great fathers, but it doesn't mean they're great, partners. So that's where the discord comes in. We don't get together off top and say, you know what? I fucked up. Instead, what we do is we say, you know what? Cover me. She's going to find out. And that's where we're fucking up. There's a trust issue. And then the fathers want to go to court and say, well, I make this money. I do all this. Well, the thing is that, yeah, there was no contract, but this woman did take her time, her resources to move in with you and set herself up to where you've made a promise saying, you know what? Don't go to work. I'll take care of you. or even if you do go to work, let's go half on this, and I will, you know what I mean, that's the contract, whether verbal or not. When you cheated on her, in her mind, all those contracts were broken.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't get married. And even if you did get married, you would, which, and I love Adrian to death, Eric, but in this time, in any generation after, let's say you were born after 2020 or 2000, sorry, after 2000, if you were 23, 24 years old and you were thinking about marriage in America right now, you are a fucking idiot and you were brainwashed, because there was nothing in it for you as a man to be married in 2023. There is no financial gain. There is no emotional gain. There is no mental health gain. There is no life expectancy gain. There is nothing in it for you as a man, because the appreciation of a woman does not go up in value as they get older and they claim to be used and abused. Point
Look,
blank.
I'm 29, but you know, I look, I agree with a lot of. I think it's value in being married, and that's just because of the way I was raised. And now I'm single.
And it raised that, and that's the thing is,
It,
we're coming into AI now.
yeah.
The whole structure of family is going to be thrown out
Hey
the window
Norman,
here in about 2 generations.
I'll be damned if I'm dating a robot.
You may not be, but you may not be having grandchildren like you think, like you were raised.
Yeah, no, but with the part you made about when a woman gets hurt and then she immediately starts plotting and planning. Fathers, there is a culture of fathers that exists amongst us where we have to suffer in silence, right? And then you have a lot of fathers who don't have the privilege to be able to take time off of work as much to go to court and fight this through and through. Or they don't even know, their biggest fear is, oh shit, she's gonna put me on child support. They don't even know that the laws are all written that joint custody is in the best interest of the child. And I think amongst fathers, we have to hold each other accountable, because there's a couple of my friends who I've had to help throughout the last few years, by saying like, yo, you're not just going to get your kid every other weekend. Like at 50-50 is the bare minimum. Like your child needs you just as much. They need you like that. That is the bare minimum. And that's something I think as fathers, we have to, because you have a lot of fathers who they really letting these women bully the shit out of them.
Listen,
You're right, but at the same time, we have a lot of fathers that ain't worth shit too. We have a lot of fathers, just like
100%.
women, they cry wolf about how much of a victim they are because, for whatever excuse, but you see them all the time. Their social media account tells everything about them, because I do background checks on everybody, you know what I mean, as far as like criminality and stuff like that. And then I help out fathers and parents too. And you can always see who are going to be the successful parents by looking at their social media. That father that is on there and he's got pictures of girls and connection to, and all his shit is Snapchat booties and, all that stuff. That is not that what he puts out on social media is basically a reflection of what he is thinking about most of the time on his mind, because he is sitting there at work making those posts.
Yeah.
He's not sitting there at work thinking, you know what, because I guarantee you go on mine or Eric's post, it's either going to be about father's rights or it's going to be about trying to figure out how to save yourself money to fight for father's rights. So you don't have to get an attorney or something like that. So we try to show you how to use Chat GTP. We try to use how to use AI and all that stuff, so you could do it yourself up into a certain point, unless you're a certain caliber and could take it all the way like me. Because not every father is going to be successful in going to court. But what you can do, just like Christmas shopping, you can just go ahead and make sure that you save yourself some money by budgeting out your time, by not doing it all at the last minute right before trial and say, I got to get an attorney, I got to get all this evidence together, I got to, you know what I mean? And do the last minute Black Friday sale for court and say, well, this is why I'm father of the year, after you just went in there and erased 90% of your fucking Facebook and social media profile. You know what I mean? So for the father that is thinking Christmas in July or February, they're thinking about their social media and saying, you know what? My kids are going to see this. My ex is going to see this. The judge may even see this. Let me start acting like an adult and stop acting like I'm trying to impress the boys on the block.
You
That's
see,
what it comes down to.
now I'm gonna let you know, Kwame. I met with somebody from Baltimore City Rex last week. Okay, and she asked me. She said, Eric, how much would it cost for us to bring your program to the rec centers? I'm like, why would I charge fathers for services that they need to understand on how to be a better father? Okay. And the program that I brought on to is from the National Fatherhood Institute. Okay. That helps fathers talk about what Norman just spoke about, being a better father, being a better parent. Okay. Now, what I asked her was to see how the program goes. I want to do a rec center, have it at a rec center on the east side and have it at a rec center on the west side and just compare the data from those. Okay? Because the only way you'll get a certificate to take into court that says you completed a actual fatherhood program other than what's at the Center for Urban Families is that you have to complete the entire program. Okay? Now, you get to do it by yourself. You get to do it on the computer, or you get to do it some the Saturdays that I'm at the rec center that I'll be streaming. Now, I'm gonna show you something. Here is a book that I have. Okay, I have it right here, but this is just for y'all to see. It's called Vital Topics for the Staff to Discuss with Dads. Okay, some fathers aren't ready for that conversation, but they have to be ready for it to go forth. Okay. As Norman says, those fathers who aren't ready. Now,
It comes down to emotional intelligence and constructive criticism. You know what I mean?
okay.
So and this is what fathers that I deal with, why I have to back away from some fathers and why I can't help everybody is because a lot of fathers want to say, well, I'm so much smarter than her. I went to school, you know what I mean? But when you go to court, are you going to be able to keep your cool in front of that judge? You may be smarter than her and be able to look up everything and outthink her and everything else. But all she has to do is say something that, let's say, as trivial as saying you got a small dick. Are you going to unwind and lose your fucking shit and all your intelligence goes out the window because everybody looks at you like you're an emotional baby because you can't maintain yourself as a man? And it's funny because like when we talk in a segment like this, nobody's ever going to cry, lose their cool, start arguing, fist fight. You know what I mean? Even if we were in person. But you throw a female in the mix, and somebody in the crowd will play Captain Save-A-Ho when she starts crying because somebody in the audience or some one of us did something to her or whatever. I guarantee it. It's always going to be somebody in that human factor or that factor to say, well, she reminds me of my sister, or she reminds me of my mom or my daughter or something like that. So there's always going to be that factor in your mind. Well, maybe he did do that to her. You know what I mean? And because she's in the mix. But when the female, like I said, goes to her circle, you're not in the mix. Nor are your friends. There's nobody there to confer what's going on. So when she starts building up this evidence against you, she's keeping track and she's putting it on social media too. She's like letting them know. You see him on TikTok all the time with the little black eyes and shit, and or the bruised arms. I don't know if you get them on your thread or whatnot, but because I'm into parental rights education and all that stuff, you'll start seeing the abusive stuff when it comes down to a certain time of year when they do like abuse rights awareness or some shit like that. And all these TikToks will start coming up where women are like, "I was abused," and then you find out that there was some kind of filter they used to make it look like they had a black eye or some shit. But long story short, AI is getting to the point now where these women are like decades ahead of you guys, of you fathers, where you guys are on there looking up porn and looking up, stats for the basketball games and all the stupid, barbaric shit that we do. They're on there learning the apps. They're on there learning the AI. They're on there ahead of you guys, not just doing selfies. They're on there doing businesses. So when these judges go in there in court and they're trying to compare and say, which is the better parent, they go back in their chamber, or even when they're talking to you, if you had a mirror behind the judge, I guarantee
he's looking up your social media profile because that's the only way he's going to know who you are. That's the only way. And he's going to pull up your profile real quick. And I know this because I've been doing this for years. A judge, 9 times out of 10, they don't look at that paperwork to judge on who they want at the very end unless there is an attorney and there is like egregious child pornography or domestic violence. It makes it very simple for the judge. But if it's just pro se parent on parent and you both are throwing mud at each other, the only discord he has is to look at your social media. And if he sees that she is about starting a clothing design and she's about mental health and she's doing all this fake shit that you know she's not about, but it looks good for the judge, she is light years ahead of your dumb ass. And I'm not talking about you guys here, but anybody who's watching that is on there, just on YouTube, looking up sports or just on their social media, posting girls or whatever. You think freedom of speech is free. It's not free. Everything that you say and do has a ripple effect. So if you are about fatherhood, you need to be about fatherhood if you want your kids. There ain't no half stepping about it. That's what it comes down to. I hear a lot. I don't want to pay child support. I don't care if you want to pay child support or not. The problem is do you want to take care of your kids? Because if you do want to take care of your kids, child support ain't going to be a factor. I guarantee it. But it's the fathers that worry about child support first are the ones that I raise an eyebrow about.
Right.
See, I
Wisdom versus knowledge, my man.
no, I'm saying as like every situation is different, right? But what fathers have to know before going into court, or number one, they should know that court is an option and a resource. And then a lot of times, if you start getting red flags from this woman, you should take yourself down to court. And that might help you in the long run. The other part is creating a culture and a community, right? Because if it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a community to support the parents. And building a conversation to fathers where you can take off that armor that we got to be these tough guys or whatever, and instead be like vulnerable men whose children are being affected, because that shit hurts. Mm-hmm. Right? Like being kept from your kid affects you emotionally. It affects you in every aspect. You can't go to work.
Your manhood. And she got you by your manhood.
And they know it because they weaponize the children to get whatever they want. And there's a blueprint that they are using. You're an abuser. You are a drunk, whatever the fuck they can think of.
A financial enslaver. You won't let me work. You won't let me see my family. You're absolutely right. When it was their idea to move because they were tired of, you know what I mean? I've been there. I got 3 baby mamas, and each one I try to make it better than the last time. And my problem is that I stayed in the same toxic city hoping for something new. All these women are drinking the same fucking water out here.
Well,
so it didn't matter if it was a black one. It didn't matter if it was a Mexican one. It didn't matter if it was an introvert, that wasn't in the streets or whatever. They all still did the same exact playbook, like you said.
And did they all
victimized themselves?
They all wound up hanging up on you?
Well, victimized. Well, no. Basically, what had happened is it wasn't amicable. Where I was trying to be the emotional and the intelligent one, they saw it as me trying to be perfect. And doing so, they saw it as competition and say, well, I need to ding his perfect armor. Yeah, I know his flaws. I know he's this. I know he's got asthma, or I know he's got a cavity, or or whatever. And then they know you have a chink, but you don't show people. So their job is now to say, you know what? He's not the better parent. He wasn't the better person in the relationship. All my friends are watching this shit. So now I got to prove what I started before he even try to defend himself.
And you know what? We have to teach men, right? And father, they can say all of that. Number one, they got to prove it. But number two, Your Honor, she could say, I was out here in the streets selling dick. What that got to do with my child?
Exactly. And I've had that happen.
I've had that happen. The judge
What
is
does
like,
that
as
have,
long
Your Honor?
as
I might
she's
be
in and out
all
of
in this headache.
hotels, as long as there ain't no tricks in the hotel and them kids are safe and they got a pillow under and they got four walls, they're fine to visit with her.
Your
And I
Honor,
was
yeah,
blown away. I was blown away.
I had it with last summer at the hearing where, because what complicated my situation was that my daughter's mother was also a teacher at the school that she enrolled my daughter at. So she fucked herself up because she made all these claims of abuse, but as a teacher never reported it.
And she is obligated to
To
report.
report, a mandatory report, and she wound up bringing one of her coworkers to court. So the
Ooh.
judge, they both lost their teaching certificates, can't teach ever again. But the judge,
Good.
what he did was eventually he's like, man, for 4 years you've been swearing something's wrong with this little girl. He's saying the little girl's perfect. You're swearing he's abusing her. I'm gonna give you a whole day next week to come and prove any of these allegations. I had to sit through 7.5 hours of being attacked, being lied on by her, my daughter's teacher, the sisters. It came to the end. The judge said, I said, Your Honor, please let me just, because you get defensive. I was like, I know it's the end of the day. Let me just get, a couple things. He said, sir, I'm gonna ask you 2 questions. He said, why do you think she's doing this? And what do you want out of this? And I answered the questions, and he said, sir, you don't need to prove anything. You don't need to defend anything. I don't believe anything she said.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Now, gentlemen, before we go on, somebody already posted that they're getting upset because how we are. They say we're degrading women, Norman.
You know what? You know what? You know what? If they have a problem with that, that means that they are the problem themselves in the relationship. It's always the trolls that have an issue when guys get together and start actually doing something positive and actually trying to figure something out, that they come and say, "Me too, but I was abused and you're abused and I feel some." You tell that bitch to move the fuck on. And if it's a dude, tell him to untuck his legs and move the fuck on.
now I think no. Well, number one, I think the way to frame it is, this is not a man versus woman issue, right?
Thank you. Thank you.
This is a issue where fathers are upset because of the things that are said across the board in these courtrooms and the way that the courts are used to weaponize children and keep fathers away. But it's not a degrading to women, right?
Well, the thing
because
is,
in this
is
instance,
if we were
just let me,
women, if we were women doing
Norman,
this,
let me
there
get,
wouldn't be no
that's
issue.
not no, that's not what the main
If we
issue
were
here
gay
is.
doing this, there wouldn't be an issue. It's
No.
the fact that we're heterosexual men
Hold
of
on, hold
color
on,
Norman,
that people have an
hold
issue
on.
about this.
It's deeper than that, right? We are men who are fathers, and the person who has weaponized our children happens to be a woman. But what we also are sons to mothers
Mm-hmm.
who watched us go through this. We are nephews, we are cousins, we are brothers. There are women in our lives who watched us go through this and who have been there and understand the anger, because this is like, we have to, a lot of this is, right, our advocacy was enacted out of anger or disappointment, right? There is an emotional attachment to why we do this, because we've been through it and we've been affected. And so it's not that we're degrading women. What we are degrading is a system that is in place right now that harms men trying to be fathers. And then
Well,
everything that man has done in his life is then used against him to try to justify why he should not have proximity to his children.
you're absolutely right. But there are different types of soldiers for different types of aspects of fighting. And as far as how you look at a battle, you have your frontline soldiers, which would be your normal fathers, which are on the front line, which are the cannon fodder that we learn from. And then you have your generals and everybody who stands back and watches the battlefield so they could tell everybody else coming up what is happening and who the new enemy is and who the enemy is consorting with and whatever else. So there's different perspectives of what's going on. You're absolutely right. My biggest supporter is my mother. My Eric's biggest supporter is his wife. You know what I mean? There's no doubt that we don't need a backing of a female to help us out, because females are hurting just as much as the males are in this aspects. You know, and I got more women supporters on my platform than I have male supporters, only because the women are the one that bring the message to their men. Because the men are just too busy or just too fucking egotistical that they don't want to come on here and say, you know what, reach out to me, Norm. You know what I mean? I got an issue or whatever. It's usually his sister that reaches out to me. So that's how I end up helping fathers. It ain't usually the fathers themselves that reach out. So you're absolutely right on that. The thing that I have an issue with, and I deal with, and I combat trolls all the time on my platform every day. And a lot of it has to do with the women see they're scared because they don't want to. Let's put it this way. There is no rights that women don't have that a man has, and vice versa. A woman can be whoever she wants to be, just like a man can be whoever he wants to be as far as their career, choice of life, lifestyle, whatever. There's nothing stopping them. The only thing that stops them is themselves. How they worry about other people perceiving them, their own limitations. They may dream big, but they don't exercise type thing, whether it's their mind or their body. But there's steps and there's rules to get to there. When you, as a man, especially a man of color, knowing you're behind the eight ball, and we try to come together, whether it's through civil rights, whether it's through father's education, whether it's through education, educational rights altogether for CRT, anything. There's always going to be opposition, but you know where there's never opposition? When women of any color go to family court and ask for help. There's never pushback. So when I do these shows and you get a troll coming on there and they're saying, you're just bashing women, every time I'm the same way. Go tell a friend what I'm doing and ask them if they feel the same way.
Well,
And
now
if they
I
do,
think in this,
if they do, bring
instance,
2 more friends and bring them on here and comment on my videos, because you're going to bring up the algorithm being emotional about my shit.
no, I think in this instance, the person that made the comment, I don't think was necessarily a troll.
Oh.
Yeah. And I know,
You
like,
got to give me a name. You got to give me a name.
looking at this, we can't see the comments.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. So, but there are people commenting as we are on live, and so I think, I don't think it was a troll.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But
Did you go live on Facebook and YouTube?
Yes.
Oh, I wouldn't even know. I thought we were just recording. I'm just on here. You know me. I don't fake the funk. I get on here. I tell the truth no matter what. So you're going to get the same no matter what.
Yeah, but I do think it's important because I think a lot of the conversation, and look, before I decided to like launch the Foundation for Fathers a few weeks ago, one of my biggest things was, look, me doing this and being on the platform, there will be women who are like, he hates women and blah, blah.
Oh,
and
all the time.
One of my mentor, J. Wendell Gordon, who's one of them prominent Black attorney in Maryland, very successful. He had to say, no, this is not about hating women, because there are more women who are supporting the fathers because they have to watch their loved ones go through this. And I'll tell you one thing, my mom would come to court with me just to be there, because I had to go from Baltimore to DC. And after about 2.5, 3 years, my mother, when we left court one day, she had tears in her eyes. And my mother came out to me and said, I understand why men walk away. This is complete. That I understand. My mother told, I would not be mad at you if you said, let's deal with this when the child gets older, because this is too much on you. And
that's the difference between the nice guy and the good guy. The nice guy will walk away because he doesn't want a confrontation. The good guy is going to do what's in the best interest of the child in that moment, which means he's going to fight. He ain't going to give up and say, you know what, let me put it off to another day, because there may not be another day. What if that kid doesn't have you in his life and you wait 2 years and he's influenced by somebody else in his high school and he has a drug overdose?
No, 100. And that's what I tell my friends now, because I'm very like open with what I've been through, and like even gaining full custody to even reverting back to 50-50. But I tell my homeboy, look, unless you try to be in your kid 50% of the time, at minimum, we can't even be friends. And I can care less about the child support. I care more about you actively being there presently. Because the whole
and you're absolutely right, because time does not dictate debt. You know what I mean? Just because you're a bad financier or you don't have the same financial resources that other fathers have, doesn't mean that you can't adopt your time to make up for that lack of financial support. So
Yeah,
your visitation shouldn't be dictated on your lack of child support.
yeah, and I think a longer conversation and a longer like fight we have to have is because child support, although it's monitored by the states, the states have to abide by the federal law. And so it's actually a federal mandate that says if the parent is behind, you have to take their license and their passport. That's federal, and we have to attack that on a different level because
Mm-hmm.
number one, I think child support should be, if it is ordered, it should be administered in a similar way that EBT is, where it should be on a card, only be able to use, and then you have to go through an audit every 6 months because justify where this money is going that is for the child. If you're telling me my obligation is $1,100 a month for this child, show me where $1,100 was spent for this child.
God damn.
And because there was one point where that was my child support, even though I had my daughter 14 to 16 days a month. And my whole argument to the judge was, where's the money when I have my child? If I have to give it all to her, how am I supposed to then maintain my child and as well as my own things? But that's something we have to fight on a bigger scale, legislatively, federally first, and then go to the states.
Well, I think a lot of it comes down
Hold on, let
to
me say
is
something, Norman. Let
go
me
ahead.
say something. Kwame, you're right. However, have you read Title 4D?
No, what is that?
Okay. Title 4D of the Social Security Act talks about how child support is made. Okay. In that legislation, child support is supposed to be made up off of the absentee father. Okay. The judge's rulings, at least here in Maryland, the judge's rulings make the father's absence.
Yeah.
All right. When you see fathers who cannot see their child only but every other weekend,
Mm-hmm.
But with that
every
being
other
said, too,
weekend.
you got to remember every case is different, and you don't know. As much as we all get together and we talk, like I don't know how Eric acted in court. I don't know how Kwame acts in court. You guys don't know how I act in court because we never sat in each other's court case. But your etiquette is going to determine your outcome in court
Well,
because
no,
it's a
there are instances. Well, certain states, like I know in DC, it doesn't matter what you say. There's a guideline, and that guideline says you have to give 30% of your income.
no. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about as far as there's an etiquette of behavior that you have to have. And
Oh yeah, well, yeah, but
if you're in court and you can't be respectful even to the mother of your child in court, and you have to be cynical and facetious in front of a judge when the judge is just trying to do his job and get you out of there so he can move on to the next one, but you're wasting his time nitpicking back and forth and taking pop shots, the judge is going to make his decision based on your emotional intelligence, not off any exhibits that you have, no matter if you're 100% right, because he's going to see that when you guys leave that courtroom, you're the antagonist. You're not the one who's being the bigger person. You're not being the adult in the room. You're just trying to get even. You may be smart, but you're not, again, emotionally intelligent. So a lot of it comes down to your etiquette. So if you can get into court, and like you were saying earlier, Kwame, if you can take the friendly fire, because she's your baby mama, it's friendly fire. It's not like she's some stranger off the street that you could just knock in the face and walk away or whatever. But you know what I mean. But friendly fire from the mother of your children, and just take it. The judge is going to see your emotional intelligence, and he's going to give you a chance to defend yourself. And if you can just be emotionally intelligent and say, Your Honor, none of that is true.
yeah, and I think that comes with like that because understanding right with the complexity in the custody cases that this is personal, and a lot
They
of
see
times
angry black man is what I'm getting down to.
and
When
it's
as
an
soon as you
attack, and
peek
so
out angry black man, you're dead in the water.
but so it comes with the advocacy part, but also the communal part of coaching fathers. Hey, when you go in there, make sure you put something like a collared shirt on.
Well, for that, what do? Tell them Tell them what we do. We actually have them go through a mock trial.
Yep.
We
Hmm.
actually give them, I'll say, instructions on how to speak. Okay, what we do. Okay, we give you actually two mock trials when you come to us. We give you the mock trial based off of how you're going to present yourself. Okay, without any education, and you then give them a mock trial after they've gone through the whole process. You've gone through your whole, we've gone through how to present yourself. We've gone through how to look up the case law. We've gone through how you document and you present it. But the biggest thing we do, we tell them how to go in there dressed appropriately. Even if you can't afford anything, make sure your shirt is pressed. Make sure if it's able to be tucked in, tuck it in. All right.
Hmm.
And we also, I had a friend of ours by the name of Vera. She got me suits from from a church. Suits. I tried to give the suits out for fathers for when they went to court. Only a few fathers took advantage of that. All right. I I didn't want to seem like we were begging you to do what's right for your own child. However, I we were setting it up for you to present yourself as the biggest advocate for your child.
Yeah, and
Because
because and
basically,
with and I've sat in and I've luckily right I have parents and Vera is my aunt and I come from a family where I'm shown that right or wrong, but I've sat in court and I've watched men go off on the judge out of pure frustration with the system and the process, and it's understandable, right? And so, like having those conversations in these programs with these men, look, this is a strategy. You have to give the judge the parameters in which you want them to rule. Most a guy, 8 out of 10 guys on the street don't know that is how a courtroom operates, right? And so it's about but it's also like well, one of the things we're going to do in 2024 is also start providing uh, like free legal resources where we'll have an attorney on staff, uh, like actually take on some cases and go into court with these guys because there are some folks who do need that, right? There are guys who like can't just aren't as articulate uh, enough to go in there themselves. And those are the fathers we want to help. But I firmly believe that I have one friend in Texas going through it right now. And I said, bro, you are smart enough. You should not be having to pay your lawyer all these thousands of dollars because what the judge wants to hear you say is articulate why you are a good father, why this is in the best interest of the child, and give the judge the parameters around what you want him to rule on. And but part of it is the appearance, right? Showing up, playing into respectability politics, because at the same time, it's still a courtroom. You still have to know the decorum of saying, yes, your honor, no, your honor, good morning, that kind of things. And it's important because a lot of guys, unfortunately, just don't know. And especially black men, if you've never been in a courtroom outside of a criminal proceeding, which unfortunately a lot of us do, you don't know that in the civil proceeding, it's still the same rules and you should approach these custody cases in front of this judge the same way you would as if it was a criminal case.
now hold on. And I think my wife was looking at this and she can attest to this. We went up, she went to court with me, okay?
Hmm.
She went to court with me when I went up against the magistrate, okay? And it was about it was about to take a turn to the left, okay? Unlike you said, Kwame, I had researched, I had found out several things that were permissible for me to do, okay? And I'm gonna explain what I mean. Now, when you went to court, Kwame, did you stand up and raise your right hand?
Yes.
Okay, do you know you don't have to do that?
Yes, but in that instance, like look, y'all, let's just hurry up, get this over with.
When in Rome, when in Rome.
Yeah,
but
Now, Eric, you're
we
right about not having to do that, and you're kind of stepping in the rounds between church and state, and whatever the like the secret codes are. You know what I mean, as far as the judges and what you don't know and stuff like that. And I was getting at that a little bit. I was going to touch on that a little bit earlier too, before we got sidetracked. And as far as and let me digress a little bit. As far as me talking shit about women, it's the toxic women that I have an issue with. And I don't care if you're black, white, whatever. If you're not toxic, you shouldn't be offended. That's what it comes down to. But when I'm talking, it's because I've dealt with women that have betrayed me for the best interest of my child. So if I get animated about it and somebody's on the team and they're like, "Oh, Norman's off the," I apologize if you know me or whatever. But as far as a troll or anybody else that's offended, be offended. But as far as like our support and everything like that, we know our supports know us, and when they know that our anger is directed not at them, and they are not every woman. Because if they were, we wouldn't be with them. You know what I mean? So
well,
I understand that, but to my point is what I'm getting at is as far as like us coming together and what Kwame was saying too, there has to be a safe place for us, just like there's a safe place for them, where they demand everywhere they go is a safe place. They go to get their nails done, it's got to be a safe place. They go to the grocery store, it's got to be a safe place. There has got to be a safe place for men to come together and say what they have to say without being tailored or you know what I mean, without being judged or saying you know you need to come out of that man cave, you know what I mean, or whatever, because you're getting too much information, you know what I mean, but there's never a safe place for us. You know what I mean? So and that's what needs to be established. I think that's what we're missing as far as like us coming together as a group, because you'll have these men that will come together and say, you know what, we need to fight for fathers' rights, but we're not the same as those fathers over there because we're white or we're Jewish or we're not in the same financial bracket as them. So we're all parted. Whereas women don't care about rich or poor, white or black. If they see another woman that's being abused on Lifetime TV, they're going to shed a tear because they have that camaraderie. Men don't see it that way. We're tribal.
now, fathers, this has been we went over it, but this was a conversation that was needed. All right. Now, I hope we can get back together again. I know your time is precious, Kwame, before you go across the country or wherever, or out of the country. Um, this needs to happen again. Now, also, fathers, I want you to know that yes, we are coming to a rec center to discuss this. We are coming around to discuss this. Norman and I will be in communication further. Kwame, this conversation is not over. You know that
no, yeah,
between us.
yeah, I've enjoyed it.
All right. But fathers, I want to thank you for coming on today, having this discussion about perseverance. Your children growth depend on it because it does. With that being said, I'm going to end this for tonight, and I want to thank you.
Strategies, fatherhood, the courts, and custody. With winning strategies, fatherhood, the courts, and custody, you get quality service. I had a father call me at work, because he filed on his own, and they were trying to basically ream him with child support. So he stood up in front of the judge and said, "Well, judge, I have a problem with that. I
All right, everybody, I want to thank you for coming on, watching. I want to thank you for being here. Remember, you can reach out to us at 443-768-8158 or at winningstrategies.fcc@gmail.com. With that, I want to say good night